We're just going to hang out. Bandit says hello. We're just going to hang out, wait to see who joins. Normally on Friday streams, I don't have any specific topics. Rather, we just hang out, wait to see who joins and what you guys want to talk about. However, today I was thinking of talking um, a little bit about York Rite because Friday the 13th is obviously, and I was going to say important, infamous might be the better term when it comes to the Knights Templar and York Rite Freemasonry. Actually, I was thinking of specifically talking about Thomas Duncurley. I found various articles about him, Wikipedia actually. And again, I know it's not maybe the best primary source. However, Wikipedia does have a very good article about him and his importance to and for the craft and to and for Freemasonry. So, but for the time being, let's just wait to see who joins. Any chats about Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral, I'd love to hear them. And thank you all so much for being here. If you are like me and you love scary movies and you love all things scary, then I hope that you are going to spend the day leaving some milk and cookies out for Jason. Also, I do want to make sure I remind you guys of some things I have coming up today, 11 p.m. Eastern, on my personal YouTube channel, youtube.com/Cameron Adamson. At 11 p.m., I'm going to be doing a watch along of My Bloody Valentine. It's available for free on Tubi, at least in Canada. Hang out with me. We'll celebrate the combination Friday the 13th, Valentine's Day combo. That's my personal YouTube channel. We won't talk about Freemasonry unless people want to. We'll just hang out, watch some scary stuff, and have a good time. On March 11th and 12th, I'm going to be taking part in the Medium pub crawl. Medium is basically the equivalent of YouTube, but for writers. It gives you the opportunity to publish your written work and for people to find it in the same way on YouTube you can publish your audiovisual work. Pub crawl, it's a virtual event. It's a virtual like basically it's a Zoom meeting where there's multiple different conference rooms within the Zoom structure. So I can meet with people who are writing about a variety of different topics. And at the same time, I can share with them my work, my written work on Freemasonry. So that is going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to that. March 28th is going to be a very special event. Squared Campus Promotions is hosting at the Windsor Masonic Temple Ballroom from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. It's going to be a community services fair. More information about that will be coming down the line very soon. So be prepared for that. But mark in your calendars if you're in the Windsor, Essex area. And as always, I continue to do my push-ups. Now, I may be traveling this weekend. If I am, that will affect my upload or streaming schedule. However, as soon as I know for sure, I will leave a post, I will leave information on my social media channels about the change in the streaming schedule. Hello, Freemason Courtney. I'm debating it, brother Michael Moore. I'd like to attend it because I never have, and it's so close to me. But I may also, in fact, be attending the Conference of Grand Masters in Chicago. And if I'm there, I wouldn't be able to, unless it would to somehow be able to do the thing where I attended the wreath laying first, and then um, I could, in theory, take the train or the bus or something from the wreath laying to Chicago, which is possible. So there's a couple different possible reasons as to why. Do I? Oh yeah, I got dry. I've always had dry lips though, in fairness. It's always been a pain. I'm wondering now if that's possible. What time is the wreath laying ceremony again, Michael Moore? I mean, it makes sense because it's President's Day, right? So that might be worth attending. Darth Clorox, you can ask your question. I can't make any promises. Nice. Where are you going for your trip? Well, I'll take the beautiful eyes, the MNS. That's 50-50. Um, how much Knights of Columbus? Well, they are not connected except in the sense that they all occupy the same space, which is the civic space, right? They all occupy that space. Um, and it's a very important and valuable space. And I have nothing but respect for all of them. If you're asking the question, though, like how similar are they? Uh, each one is a civic order. Each one is, known as, if nothing else, a fraternal order. Each one builds stronger communities, but each one has a very different history as well as a very different set of rituals and ceremonies. So you need to keep that in mind as well. Nice. I've been to Colorado a couple times, but never Aspen. This is how I do it. This is how I like my hair. I don't like it too long. Ugh. It's tempting to go to the wreath laying ceremony, Michael Moore. Um, I got big spaces in my teeth. I've grown to accept it. What can I say? Once again, though, I hope everybody is doing well. They could have been Mr. Keeps. I mean, I don't know anything about the actual, you know, uh, Knights of Columbus rituals myself, other than, again, ultimately, I'm always been of the belief, and I'm not going to pretend like some Masons don't disagree with me. I think it's short-sighted, but I've always been of the belief that as any civic group becomes more powerful, not powerful, that's not the right term, as any civic group grows in health, so too does Freemasonry, right? This idea that we can live in a society where the Knights of Columbus are struggling, or the Elks are struggling, or the Moose is struggling, but somehow Freemasonry will be prosperous, is just not the case, right? At least not in my experience. As civic institutions in general grow in strength and numbers, Freemasonry will grow, excuse me, right along with it. I mean, the best example of that is in the 1920s and the 1950s. It was, two boom periods in terms of Freemasonry. It was also two boom periods in terms of civic engagement in general. When Masonic membership was at its height, so was the Moose, so was the Elks, so was probably Knights of Columbus. Jordan, thank you. Yes, I was going to say Google will help with the cipher rules. I don't actually know the cipher. I mean, I know the cipher you're referring to. It basically it looks like a tic-tac-toe board with the dots in it, but I don't actually know how to solve the cipher. I'm sure I could if I really sat down and thought about it. Um, but I do not know it off the top of my head. So Jordan, oh, computer crew, nice try. Um, Viking Toa, when you say saved, my assumption is you are speaking in a Christian context. Um, I could be mistaken though, but that is my assumption. Why do you ask the question, Viking? Do you ask the question in general on streams or do you focus on Masonic streams? Just go slow. There's nothing wrong with going slow, Freemason Courtney, so long as you're staying involved in your lodge. That to me is always going to be the most important thing. It doesn't matter if you take 1 year or 5 years. What matters, at least in my opinion, has always been how active you are. You can be an incredibly active, entered apprentice. Okay, Viking Toa. Well, I'm not a Christian myself. I do believe in a supreme being, as do all Freemasons. However, I'm not a Christian myself. This channel isn't about religion. This channel is about Freemasonry. Having said that, let me know, for example, if you have any, like again, if you have any questions about Freemasonry, I would love to try to answer them to the best of my skill and abilities. Freemason Courtney might not know the difference because honestly, I had always been brought up with long form. I didn't know there was a short form version of it, to be honest. Um, I like the long form myself. I much prefer it to short form. However, I think also somewhat to each their own. I can respect every jurisdiction needs to find for themselves what is best. Junior ward is a very tough position. Although, what's so interesting in in Michigan or Detroit specifically, again, there is a statue of George Washington. It's literally right across the river from me at Mariners Church. Like I could swim across the river. I'm not going to. Border Patrol, don't come and get me. But I could swim across the river and basically end up almost right at that statue. It's of George Washington in his full Masonic regalia. And every year for President's Day, I'm assuming, the Masons lay a wreath at his monument. I've always found it really interesting that George Washington, he's not someone I ever associate with Detroit or with Michigan or with Michigan Freemasonry or with Detroit Freemasonry, and yet, he has a statue with full Masonic regalia. I've always found that fascinating. Oh, it's Washington's birthday. Is that why it's President's Day? Because it's Washington's birthday? Okay. Enjoy life. I'll take it. Most people say I'm ugly, so if you think I look like Kane, I will take it happily. By the way, there is an official visit and second degree tonight, Michael Moore, if you want to make the jump across the river. Um, you're obviously more than welcome. My granddad was a Mason. JOM. Did he pass away before you were born? Like my grandfather was a Freemason. He passed away before I was born, but I will say, I've talked about this before, being a Freemason absolutely has made me feel closer to him because, we were both Freemasons. We both took part in the same rituals. We're both part of the same organization. So it does make me feel closer to him than I would have otherwise. Again, Lobola, why do you say that? Freemasonry is relevant to me. Is that not good enough? Why must it be relevant to you to be relevant? I think is the question. Enjoy life. Thank you again. Viking Toa. Yeah, so to my knowledge, George Washington was not a Freemason. I've never seen any evidence that he was or that he is. Video gamer, you are dot dot dot. Well, first of all, it's not junk. One man's trash is another man's treasure. One man's junk is another man's treasure. Having said that, if you don't like it, then or you don't want it, then be a good brother, be a good person, and return it to the Masonic Lodge to which your grandfather belonged. Would be the kind and moral thing to do. That is not true, Jason Bender. In fact, most of the presidents, excuse me, of the last century were not Masons. The last undisputed Masonic president was Gerald Ford. Before that, LBJ, Truman, FDR, Theodore Roosevelt. Um, some would argue Joe Biden is a Freemason. It depends on if it depends on if you believe or don't believe in the idea of being made a Mason on site. George W. Bush was not a Freemason. Where do morals come from? Well, that's the question. Um, um, well, I mean, the online videos, a lot of them are bullshit. Highlanders, you need to be incredibly careful about that. I think, I mean, I can't speak for that question in a Masonic sense because every Mason will have his own way of deriving morals. Some will be Christian, some will be Muslim, some will be Jewish. Some may believe in the derivation of morals without looking towards religion, which is somewhat where I'm on the where I come from. I think morals come from our ability to rationally observe the universe and then make decisions that ensure the best outcome for the majority, the best outcome being defined as the most rational outcome in accordance with nature, right? You could argue I'm primarily a utilitarian with a hint of stoicism in there, right? So utilitarians will say in any given situation, you should make the decision that maximizes the good. And when you're asked to define the good, Stoics will say the good is living in accordance with nature. And I would define nature both in terms of plants, animals, trees, but also I define nature in a more broad sense. Nature could be defined as the geometric consistency and predictability in the universe. Um, it's boring to some, um, right? Optimus Prime, Freemasonry is boring to some, but it's not boring to others, which, again, that's a personal thing. It's no different than scary movies. Like, I don't know why it is. I love scary movies. I think they're incredible. From the very first time I was a kid, the first one I ever watched was A Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3. It was at a sleepover, and I loved it. And ever since then, I love scary movies. They're my favorite things to watch by far. Nobody else in my family seems to like them. My dad never liked them. My mom never liked them. My grandparents never seemed to like them. I don't have any brothers or sisters, but even amongst like my cousins or whatever, I seem to be the one member of the family that loves these movies. But the point is my dad watches it and he finds it boring. I watch it, I think it's awesome. Who knows why? It's a personal thing. You may find Freemasonry boring and you're absolutely correct. I love Freemasonry and I don't find it boring. So, thank you, Dream Seeker. Um, would you say morals are subjective then? Asked Viking Toa. I would say, I've talked about this before. Um, I would say morals are rational, not subjective. There's a slight difference between the two, right? Subjective means anything goes, so long as it is within my subjective beliefs. So I can believe anything I want, and if the truth is subjective, then there is no way to question it. So, for example, my love of scary movies. Um, I can say that scary movie is incredible, and I'm right. You can say that scary movie is terrible, and you're right also. It's a subjective judgment. That's not the same thing as saying morals are rational. Rational means there's not an infinite number of possible moral truths or moral rights and wrongs. There are limited to what's rational, but within that, there's more than one. It's kind of in the same way as the theory of relativity, right? Within Einstein, right? It's when Einstein said time is relative, he didn't mean therefore any time is valid, regardless of how you do the calculation. There's still limits to what is or isn't a valid recording of time based on your movements and your reference frames, and the reference frame you choose to use. But you can't choose to use reference frame A and then calculate a time based on a different reference frame, if that makes sense. So morality is rational in that there's not an infinite number of possible rational outcomes or moral outcomes, but it's neither the case that there's a single moral outcome. Um, all fantasies about who is the baddest military. Well, in that case, Canada's going to crush it because Canadians are tough sons of guns. Um, Einstein's awesome. He's one of my favorites. Um, well, I mean, first of all, nobody should take anything from, the body of someone who's being passed away. I mean, there are some Masons I've actually seen who haven't been buried in their regalia, in their aprons and in their collars. Again, my advice though on that, with regard to that is you really have the responsibility um, as a Mason to write down what you want to happen when you pass away and to be detailed. So, for example, what that means is if you want, for example, to be buried with your Masonic regalia, heck, with a Masonic pocket watch, who knows with what, you need to write that in your will. You need to advise the lodge of that, and you need to let your executor know. Put it in writing. If you want all of those items to be returned to the lodge, you need to let the lodge know that as well. If you want a Masonic funeral, put that in your will. Let the lodge know, let your executor know. Don't leave it to people to guess, because that's not a healthy approach to take. Don't leave it to anybody to guess. You need to advise them and let them know. Um, well, it's not a popcorn bucket hat. It's called a fez. I'm going to assume that's slightly disrespectful, but you know what? It does look like a popcorn bucket, so I'm not going to knock it too much. I don't see why not, if that's what you want. Again, it's up to you, though, to write it down, right? At the end of the day, your apron, your fez, your jewels, your ring, they're yours. They belong to you to do with as you please. Now, you should, as a Mason, be responsible with them and entrust their safekeeping. But I'm not one who believes that, like, when you're given these items, they ultimately belong to the lodge. They're given to you. Now, there are some lodges I've heard of, and Michael Moore, let me know if you've ever heard of this as well. There are some lodges I've heard of that when they give Masons certain items, they actually make them sign a document acknowledging that the items that they're receiving do not belong to them. They actually still belong to the lodge and are to be returned to the lodge upon a demit or upon a death or whatever it is. Um, that way, for example, especially if it's the type of past master's jewel that every year gets passed on to a new past master, if the brother, for example, loses the item or pawns it or leaves and forgets to return it, the lodge itself can either, bring up civil charges or go through insurance or whatever it might be. So I have heard of some lodges doing that, but I personally am not a fan of that. I'm a believer that if it's given to you, it's yours. You are then responsible to return it if and when it's necessary. Yeah, Grand Lodge Officer jewels. In Ontario, we have past masters jewels as well. Even sometimes aprons, because some lodges are no longer purchasing aprons for Masons. Rather, they're giving them a loaner apron that, like a Master Mason apron, that is returned um, if the brother passes away. But that's more of an Ontario thing where you actually have like a Master Mason apron that's separate from the lambskin. Um, if some perfect current, if someone took my apron, I would be sad about that. I mean, I don't know. I would contact the police, make a report. I don't have my Masonic aprons insured or anything because honestly, I don't even know how I'd value them. How I would possibly make that as an insurance claim. I just have property insurance in general. So if somebody broke into my house and stole my apron, I suppose I would file a police report. I do have my Masonic jewels and rings appraised separately and insured separately. So if they ever are stolen or lost, I can get the value for them. I mean, in some ways they're invaluable or their value is beyond calculation because they're items that have been passed down to me from my grandfather to my father or from the lodge going back hundreds of years. But on the other hand, I do think it's valuable to have them insured separately and to make sure that I have the appraisals because at least I can get the value for them. Also, the other benefit of having them appraised and having pictures of them on hand is if they ever were to get stolen, I could take the appraised information and the pictures to the police for their report. But also, I could take the pictures and the appraisals to all of the different pawn shops in Windsor and just say, these were stolen from me. This is the picture of them. If anybody tries to pawn them, please contact the police immediately because they're stolen. Um, Perfect current, define a lot. You got to be really careful. That's a shortcut in thinking. The way I describe it now is whenever anybody uses terms like and says, for example, a lot or many or all, that's a shortcut to thinking. It's a sign that honestly, in some ways, you're not thinking because a lot doesn't mean anything. You know, 50% of police being Masons could be a lot, 5% of police or law enforcement being Masons could be a lot, depending on how you want to define it, right? In my experience, the majority of law enforcement are not Freemasons. In fact, the vast majority of Freemasons are not involved in law enforcement, and the vast majority of law enforcement are not Freemasons. There are some, I don't know exact numbers, but it's one of those things where if you don't know exact numbers, don't use words like a lot because it doesn't necessarily mean anything. Um, Nice, brother Michael. That's awesome that they came from your father. That's really cool. Again, I have a ring from my father and a past master's jewel from my father that came from my grandfather, which is really, really cool. Um, Vi Victe, when you say I'm a poison jab promoter, what you mean is I'm a vaccine promoter, which I absolutely am. I encourage everybody to get the vaccines. Now, obviously, nobody can be forced to take a vaccine, and I understand that, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to encourage people to get the vaccines because it's really important that we as Freemasons care about not just our health, but the health of those around us. Um, Ice Gardens, cut that out. You're going to find yourself in a timeout. I've told you this before. Being foolish on the stream gets annoying very quickly. Um, yeah, so that's about right, Freemason Courtney. In my experience, some lodges are much less expensive, like Tranquility. My dues are much less than that, but it depends on the lodge. Um, well, I'm still here. I don't feel particularly destroyed. Actually, I feel lucky I got the vaccines. Um, I can't pronounce that name. Ugh. No, Freemasonry is not an. First of all, Freemasonry is not evil. It's neither medieval, very evil, or not evil. Um, it is not Gnostic, though it does borrow some things from Gnosticism. And it is not a spin-off from Christianity. It is not a spin-off from any religion. It is not Masonic. Sorry, it is not religious. Freemasonry occupies a different space than religions. It is not 100% evil or any other times. Oh, medieval, as in like medieval times. In that case, yeah, Freemasonry did evolve from medieval guilds in the Middle Ages. Um, um, the earliest speculative Masons date to 1634. Well, Bartholomew, I wouldn't say there's nothing Christian about Masonry. In the same way, I wouldn't say there's nothing Christian about the country of Canada or the States. Obviously, Christianity had a major influence on the way our civic institutions and civil institutions developed and evolved. However, what you need to keep in mind is Christianity occupies a completely different space than Freemasonry. Christianity is a religion, it occupies the religious space. Freemasonry occupies the civic space. Um, we do not promote cultural decay. In fact, I think the stronger Freemasonry is within a country, the stronger the culture will be within that country. Um, yes, that's right. Freemasonry is not religious. Freemasonry is obviously Masonic. I'm very tired, Rondo. I just did 89 push-ups. What do you want from me? By the way, Rondo, I feel like it's been a minute. How's it going? Thank you for being here. I hope you're doing well. It's great to see you back. Um, well, get the vaccine for measles, for heaven's sakes. Don't be stupid. Um, I think I'm human. I feel human. Um, Christianity and Masonry are absolutely compatible. They're not the same. They don't occupy the same space, but they're compatible. I know many Christian Freemasons. In fact, in my experience, the majority of Masons that I've met are Christian. That has to do more with where I live, though, right? If you live in a country or a community where the majority community is Muslim, your Masonic Lodge will likely be majority Muslim. If it's majority Jewish, the lodge will likely be majority Jewish as well. It's one of those things where you need to keep in mind and remember Freemasonry will ultimately reflect the demographics of the city or community in which it's located. Freemasonry uses many symbols. Oh, that's definitely not true, Victai. You are a foolish person. Lodges are not majority Jewish, unless you happen to live in a town or community in which the population is majority Jewish. Um, so Bartholomew, Freemasonry uses many symbols. Um, if you want to use the term pagan, you can. I mean, it uses symbols from Christianity, Judaism. It uses symbols from Egypt in Egyptian mythology. It uses symbols from Chinese mythology. It uses symbols from Islam. Primarily, though, and the majority of symbols it uses derive from architectural schools or architectural orders and stone Masonic guilds. That is where the majority of symbols come from. Now, if you're defining pagan as anything not Christian, then Coca-Cola is a pagan symbol, right? I would need to know more of how you define pagan. Um, yeah, that's what Brother Michael Moore said. It's rough. It's not precise, obviously. It's rough. But in my experience, again, if I'm in, let's say, a community where it's a majority Muslim population, which I've been to several times, the majority membership is Muslim. It's rough. It's not precise. Even though in terms of things like age, income level. Like if you're in a community where the average age of the community is, let's say, over 60, because maybe the town is dying out in terms of the economy, a lot of jobs are moving away from the town, and so younger people are moving away from the town. Your lodge will be over 60 average membership age. Um, When you say you, I mean, I'm not a Christian myself, but I don't judge people, by the way, or groups or organizations for borrowing from others. I mean, one of my favorite historical time periods is the ancient Roman Empire, and they were famous for taking ideas from others and passing them off as their own. I mean, the entire Roman mythology or theology seems to be first and foremost Greek, with some pretty heavy Etruscan influences in there as well. Um, I get used to it, Ice Gardens. JC is king, not Kong. I think Freemasonry is a great brotherhood to be a part of. Now, it's not the exclusive brotherhood to be a part of. There are many other ways to find brotherhood, and everybody has to decide for themselves the best way for them to do so, right? I'm not ever going to tell anybody there's one way to find brotherhood. There's the way that works for you. The way that works for me is Freemasonry. That's just because I happen to love it. Why it is that I love it, I have no idea. Honestly, at a certain point, it becomes a personal decision. Like, or not even that. It becomes like, can you honestly explain why you love your favorite song? You can say it's the lyrics, you can say it's the melody and it's the tone. However, somebody else can hear the exact same melody, the exact same tone, the exact same lyrics, and have a completely different reaction to it. What do you hear within those lyrics and melody that the other person does not? And the truth is, at a certain point, you can't really answer that question other than to say, I like it because I like it. Why do I like Simple Man and other people don't? I can say I like the lyrics. Okay, other people hear the exact same lyrics. I can say it's a melody. Other people hear the exact same melody. At a certain point, I just have to accept it's unique to me and it's something that I love. Um, and that's true for Freemasonry. I don't expect everybody to have the same reaction to Freemasonry I do, just as I don't expect people to fall in love with the same things I do. Just, it is what it is. You don't choose to fall in love. You don't choose, um, to care about the things you care about. It's more they choose you in some way. Like one of my favorite quotes is from the movie Almost Famous, where it was Philip Seymour Hoffman was portraying this famous musician. Um, and he said, or sorry, famous music journalist. And he said, Freemasonry, or no, how do you put it? I'm trying to think of the quote. He said, good music finds you. Really, what he meant is the things you love find you. So, Freemasonry found me. There you go. That's a great reason as well. Unique blend of fellowship and brotherhood, personal development, and a deep sense of tradition. I ain't trying to destroy anything by Victi. In fact, I think all the evidence points the exact opposite. Times in history when Freemasonry was, influential or relevant in communities were times when those communities and those countries were the strongest, both for the individual members and society as a whole. It's a time when you saw the greatest growth in things like GDP, not just GDP, but at the same time, people actually led healthier lives, happier lives. Happiness was reported to be at a higher level, um, depending on how significant Freemasonry was within the community. And not just Freemasonry, but Elks, Moose, Knights of Columbus for that matter, more civic institutions. Um, when you say dot, 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 I mean, I think the things you love, yeah, have you ever tried to fall in love? I mean, you just do, at least in my experience, right? Same thing with a movie you like, a song you like. Yeah, the first time I heard Simple Man, it's not as though a minute before that I said to myself, the next song that comes on the radio, I'm going to love it. I heard it and I responded to it. I think anything else is the same thing. When it comes to the things you love, it chooses you. Now, I'm a utilitarian, which means you also have a responsibility to recognize that if you fall in love with something that's harmful, or you fall in love with something in a way that's harmful, you have a responsibility to recognize that harm and to work on yourself to readjust. So, for example, even with Freemasonry, if I love Freemasonry to such an extent that I ignore every other aspect of my life in order to be a Freemason, I ignore my health, my well being, my friends, my family, everybody around me, and just focus exclusively on Freemasonry, which things like that have happened in the past to me. That's not healthy. And then I need to take a step back and say, I may not be able to choose, to love Freemasonry, but I can choose to be as responsible as I can and not be stupid and not be dumb. And it's the same thing I think with personal relationships. Like you may fall in love with somebody. However, if they don't reciprocate it, if they don't love you back, then so be it. You have a responsibility as an adult to find a way to move on and to find a way to find somebody else. And I do believe that's possible as well. Um, so the utilitarian in me would remind everybody that just because you can't necessarily choose, the things you love, you can choose the way you respond to those feelings and making sure you're not harming anybody and using the excuse of, well, I love it, right? Because at the end of the day, if you're sacrificing you know, your health for Freemasonry and then you respond, well, I just love it, that doesn't give you the excuse to do, to engage in harmful acts. Um, we got some, I mean, Vi Victi, no. Everything about baseball is not Masonic. However, I will say there have been Masonic baseball teams in the past, and I'll also say one article I wrote on Medium, and I really liked it actually, is um, about the book and the movie Moneyball, which I actually thought had some really valuable insights on which we could apply to Freemasonry. So yeah, there are some lessons. I think Freemasonry can take lessons from almost anywhere, right? You can, one of the things I've always been really good at is finding and creating connections. And I think there's definitely some valuable lessons within Moneyball that can be applied to Freemasonry, especially being more willing to actually look at statistics and use statistical interpretation to find the problem areas within the craft. Also, just the value of trying something different and trying something new and recognizing that the same old doesn't always work and, in fact, is not working. Um, I do not take creatine. No, America is not run by satanic forces. America is run by human beings. The extent to which you think those humans are good or not good creates an incumbent level upon you to engage within democracy and engage within a community to replace that leadership with what, in your view, would be better leadership. Um, yes, Masons did not even exist in the first century. I mean, I don't know if evil is real. I think usually what I would think of as evil is weakness. Freemasonry, there's a metaphor there, right? Freemasonry is about building things to be strong, including human beings. Um, I do not know who Angry Kid is, but please hit the like and subscribe button. I'd very much appreciate it. Haven't been getting a lot of subscribers on this stream, so we got to work on that. What is the light that we were supposed to bring to people, Kikos? What do you define as the light? Because that's not something I've heard before. I don't think there is a pentagram. Heard people say that, but whenever I look at it, it's always missing one of the points. So it can't be a pentagram if it's missing one of the points. Yes, Ice Garden. Like and subscribe. Yes, Kane 44 Tree. I am a Freemason. So my left small toe. Congratulations on having a left small toe. I don't have I don't have any legs, so I don't even have a small toe. Hello, Rise. I think America is pretty great. I love America. Having said that, I'm Canadian. Canada, in my opinion, is the greatest country in the world. But that's not to say that there are not absolutely some value, that America is not absolutely a great place as well. I've always said Canada is the greatest country in the world, in part because we have the greatest neighbors in the world. Yes, user, I would 100% advise doing yoga and stretching so long as you have, you're able to do so medically, you're not going to injure yourself, and you do so at a pace that you can do, and you're not putting yourself at risk. But sure, I've even argued that Freemasons should spend the first 10 minutes of the meeting engaged in light stretching and other exercises for mental health improvement. Um, that's definitely can't be the case, Bartholomew. I'm going to say almost 100% that can't be the case. Well, they're two different places, but they're also two countries. I mean, I'm a different person than my friend, but I can, love us both. Um, oh, that's all external. It's the internal qualifications that matter, IRAP 21. I would say to you, please hit the like and subscribe button. Um, Superpower India, if you keep repeating yourself, I'm going to have to put you in timeout. I don't mind you saying Free Palestine. However, if it's repeated over and over again, it gets something. Shaquille O'Neal is absolutely a Freemason. And he is one of the most caring guys in the world. Maybe there's a valuable lesson there. He's one of the few Masons to be made a Mason on site and to have that generally accepted. There's a great debate within Freemasonry as to whether one can or cannot be made a Mason on site. That popped up most recently with Joe Biden. I personally am of the view that you can be. I don't see why you couldn't be made a Mason on site. Myself, I'm comfortable with it, but I think every jurisdiction needs to decide that for themselves. I don't think the world is run by evil. I think the world is run by people. Some may be evil, some may not be. But even when I say that, I don't think the world is run by anyone, right? What I mean by that is I think countries are run by individuals, but I don't think there's a single government agency or government force that is quote unquote running everything, right? Or even like a cabal. I don't believe that. Because I don't believe that, I think it's possible to make changes. And I think we should focus on trying to make change locally. I think Freemasons can do a ton of good for our friends and family and community members. I think that's what Masonry teaches us. Trying to change the world is very hard. Trying to help your neighbor is much simpler. It's funny. I've never really got into zombie movies. I love scary movies. I love horror. Zombie never really spoke to me. I have considered joining the Shriners. I'm just busy. Doctor Who, what, where. Forgot when, why. So I'm just so swamped. I don't really have time to join any other appended bodies. So much of my energies and emphasis are placed on Square and Compass promotions. Well, now we got the whole Israel-Palestine debate happening in the chat, because of course we do. So I would not say, for the record, so Freemasonry is not political. So the questions that relate to Israel and Palestine, um, it's not, I mean, every Freemason will have his or her exclusive opinions on that. I can't speak to how every Mason feels. I can speak to how I feel and what I would like to see, which is a two-state solution for whatever it's worth. Have your dinner, Kikos, but thank you for being here. Um, that is true. Dad makes a very good point. Also, evil can sometimes be more destructive than the good can be constructive, and that becomes a challenge, right? Like if you have, let's say, a mass shooting incident, um, even if doctors and nurses are able to save, let's say there's a mass shooting incident and 20 people are shot, and doctors and nurses are able to save 19. At the end of the day, the shooting incident was still more destructive than the doctors and nurses were constructive, because there's still one person who's gone, right? And that's why sometimes the news media focuses on the more negative stories, because they are the more impactful ones. At the end of the day, in that example I gave, you're still at a net negative one person. And not to mention, just because the other 19 victims their lives were saved, that doesn't mean they won't live the rest of their lives struggling with all sorts of both mental and physical effects from being the victims of a shooting. Um, Misery is a great book. I love Stephen King. My favorite Stephen King book, for the record, is probably The Long Walk, or it could be The Colorado King, excuse me, or it could be, sorry, The Colorado Kid, The Long Walk, The Shining, or maybe The Stand. Um, I do not know what it means to say the Freemason houses communist in Bavaria. I mean, there have been communist Freemasons. There's also been capitalist Freemasons. There's been liberal, conservative. There's been Freemasons involved in politics. Jose Rizal, George Washington. But that doesn't mean Freemasonry is political. That means Freemasons may choose to engage in politics. In the same way, Freemasonry is not a plumbing order, but I've known many Freemasons who are plumbers. Um, and we are not involved in blood magic rituals. You keep telling me things I'm involved in as though I'm not involved in them, which is very strange. I would not say that's the case. Even I don't necessarily even believe in evil per se. I believe that what we would call evil is mostly weakness, for whatever it's worth. But I think again, sometimes, what's a good word? How do I want to say it? Sometimes, what is considered to be evil is weakness, and by the same token, sometimes pessimism, more often than not, is not a particularly healthy strategy if you do want to, in fact, build a better world. Um, do you say Archduke Ferdinand in the First World War? I'm always heading east, but I'm already in the east. I'm not a big fan of that expression, to be honest, because it's very confusing, especially if you're trying to be a worshipful master or are the worshipful master. I'm the worshipful master of the lodge, Border Cities Lodge number 554. Um, yeah, there you go. I realize it probably freaks people out to see some dude off of his wheelchair just crawling around. Probably is a pretty nerve-wracking thing for them. But we're doing it for mental health, so um, and I'm very proud of the work that I'm doing with that. I'm very proud of the work everybody's doing with that. There's a lot of people doing push-ups. I see them all on social media. More power to them. I do not know what Daughter of the Star means, JOM. Do you mean Eastern Star? I think is what you mean by that. I am not enshrined, Gabriel. Um, that seems highly questionable to me, but even if there were Masons involved in his assassination, which I'm not saying is not possible, that doesn't mean it was Masonic, right? Nor does it mean the consequences afterwards were Masonic. I don't know how many of the world leaders at the time of World War One were in fact Freemasons. I couldn't say. But even if they all were, that doesn't mean there was a single Masonic entity telling them what to do. They have their own free will to do what they will. Um, Nice, Michael Moore. I will do my best, definitely, to be there for your initiation or your installation, excuse me. Um, I was just at the Michigan Lodge of Research a little while ago. I think in December, if I recall correctly. Really cool spot. No lotus flower. Freemasons do not worship Lucifer, the light bringer. Freemasonry is not a religion. So we do not worship any entities. Rather, every individual can worship as he or, she for that matter, sees fit. We have Christian, Muslim, Jewish, Freemasons, etc., etc. A Freemason is a member of a Masonic lodge. A Masonic lodge is a civic organization or a community organization or club that evolved from stone Masonic guilds in the Middle Ages. Um, oh, in January? Okay. All right, Bartholomew. Thank you for being here. You have a great day as well. No, being a Freemason, you don't get rich. Now, if you're a stonemason, if you're a professional mason, or otherwise known as operative, and you're really good at your job, you may get rich. That's very possible. But if you're trying to join Freemasonry to get rich, you're going to be incredibly disappointed. Freemasonry is not a way to get rich, despite what people may say. Yeah, I don't even like that. You're not wrong, Gabriel. Um, but I never really liked the term society with secrets. I've always said it's a organization with private elements to it, which I think is the best way to think about it. Because every organization has some private elements to it. Every family has private elements to them. That doesn't mean there's anything nefarious about them. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people have a tendency to, when they hear the term secrets, assume negative connotations, which is unfortunate because Freemasonry, again, the private nature, it's valuable to maintain that private nature, but that's not to say that within Freemasonry, it's secretive. No, we do not control Trump, nor do we control Europe. Again, despite what some people may say. No, we do not sacrifice children, nor do we make pacts with devils. So I'm very wrong. Very sorry to advise you of that as well. Okay. I mean, I had no clue. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if there were Freemasons who, within the, because I forget the name of the group that did it. It wouldn't shock me if there were some Freemason members. That doesn't mean Freemasonry had anything to do with it by like ordering anything. It just means Freemasons mess up and make mistakes and sometimes do very bad things. And when that happens, the proper steps is they are suspended from the craft, police are informed, and they serve whatever punishment is necessary based on the nature of the crime. I mean, I don't know anything about the USA India trade deal. I can only speak, or I can speak to trade in general to say I've always been a believer in free trade. I've always been a believer that someone, when they make a type of good, should be free to be able to sell it around the world with as minimal tariffs as possible. Well, don't think about it in terms of power. That's a silly way to think about it. A better way to think about it is relevance. The Illuminati are not relevant at all. They really haven't existed for almost 100 years in any meaningful way. The Rothschilds, I mean, that's a family. They're not particularly relevant. So certainly I would say Freemasonry is more relevant to the communities in which it's located than either of those other organizations, but that doesn't mean they're powerful. Power implies political persuasive abilities or economic persuasive abilities or economic force or political force, none of which Freemasonry has. Um, well, Freemasonry, I mean, what it stands for at its core is no different than getting together with your friends on a Friday night. What does that stand for? Humans are social creatures. We enjoy each other's company. And Freemasonry created a very formalized structure for that. It evolved really with no purpose beyond a social club and a social group. It, created bonds of brotherhood and bonds of support through ritual and ceremony. Um, it took the enjoyment of one another's company and then also started to engage in charitable activities, educational programs. However, at its core, it's a formalized guys' night out with a ritual component to it. It also just happens to be a very old guys' night out. It's over 300 years old, which means your dad can be part of, can go out, can be part of the group, and then your grandfather, and then you. In terms of what Freemasonry stands for, there is no single answer to that question. Every Mason needs to decide for himself. I've always said Freemasonry stands for the belief that the world can be made better through the application of brotherly love, relief, and truth. Others may say it stands for charity. In general, you could say it stands for brotherly love, relief, and truth. Ultimately, what it stands for is I enjoy spending time with people in the community. I enjoy spending time with my brothers. Um, Yes, and it is for people of different backgrounds and religions to get together. Freemasonry is one of the earliest examples of religious and ethnic tolerance in the world, despite the fact it has not always lived up to those ideals or those examples. It still, at its core, professes them. And I think that's a beautiful thing about Freemasonry. Um, Gray Billand Downs, I just call you Gray. When I hear you say look or read, you say look at the whole board, I immediately think of The West Wing. Is that where you're getting it from? That episode where the president plays chess with Sam Seaborn? I am here representing Freemasonry because I am a Freemason and I get to be on YouTube. This is my own channel. All my opinions are not meant to represent Freemasonry. They're meant to represent my opinions on Freemasonry, positive, negative, or neutral. There's a disclaimer at the bottom or the description of this video and on all my channels, which says, this is me giving my opinions on Freemasonry and why I love it. There are many Grand Lodge, or not Grand Lodge, but there are many Masonic podcasts and YouTube channels and social media content out there, some of which is done officially through Grand Lodge channels, some of which is individual Masons giving their exclusive opinions. Um, so Freemasonry has nothing to do with Bohemian Grove or the Bohemian meetings, etc., etc. I hope quite a few Masons watch me. I also hope a lot of non-Masons watch me. So if they have any questions or concerns about Freemasonry, I can help, you know, provide good answers for them. We're going to just hang out for a couple more minutes and I'm going to start talking about Thomas Dunkerley from October 23rd, 1724 to November 19th, 1795. They do not, Anward, and you got to recognize how dumb that is, right? Like, if that were the case, we'd have a whole bunch of dead Masons and the police would have a lot of questions for us, and I probably wouldn't be able to be on YouTube talking about it. No, Freemasons leave all the time. Rooster Cogburn, well, there you go. That's a foolish thing to say, but there you go. I'm going to be back tonight at 11 p.m. on my personal YouTube channel, and I'm going to be watching My Bloody Valentine on Tubi. We'll hang out together. That's youtube.com/Cameron Adamson. All right, Andy Fire. I'm the Worshipful Master right now of Border Cities Lodge, number 554 in Windsor, Ontario. I'm also a member of two other Masonic lodges here in Windsor. I'm also a member or affiliated member of Tranquility Lodge 2000 out of Texas and Lodge Holy Land out of Israel. I'm the Brotherhood. I think that's a rapper, isn't it? So welcome, Andy. Which jurisdiction are you from? I'm also 18th degree Scottish Rite. I never went to consistory though. Or I don't know what jurisdiction you're in, Knights of Kadosh, if you're in Northern Masonic jurisdiction. Northern Scottish Rite jurisdiction, I should say. I don't know what owl means. That one doesn't help me. I was born this way, so I never had them. So I guess you could say nothing happened to them because I never had them. Um, so I've never, in that case, I never heard of the Brotherhood. I could have swore there was some rapper or some musician who went by the name the Brotherhood, at least off the top of my head, but I'd have to double check that, I suppose. Um, no, they do not, Anward. They do not. That is incorrect. Local police and FBI do not cover anything up. Freemasonry has always had as one of its guiding principles, and this goes all the way back to 1723, the belief and expectation that the membership would be cooperative with local law enforcement or the local magistrates, and if any brethren are committing criminal acts, that they would be turned over to the police, lest the craft be brought to disrepute. I've said it a million times. I've seen thousands of Masonic rituals all around the world. Never have I seen anything that would be considered illegal, immoral, unhygienic, or against one's civic, religious, or familial responsibilities or employment responsibilities. Probably, honestly, probably my grandfather. He passed away before I was born. Well, then that would be wrong, and the police should do something. So if the police did nothing, that would be wrong. And if you're a good Mason and you find out the police are covering it up, you should go to a different police force and advise, or go to the press for that matter. Um, okay, your UGLE. I mean, UGLE has a great podcast, right? Craftcast, which is a really great podcast. It's not one that, that one, to my knowledge, is actually officially approved by the Grand Lodge, which is a little bit different than mine, in my jurisdiction, right, where I'm speaking for myself exclusively. But I was just in England. I was just at UGLE. It's beautiful, beautiful building, um, and that's where it all started. That's where Freemasonry started. Well, I've seen many things in movies, Anward. I've seen aliens and vampires in movies. Doesn't mean it's true. Um, and by the way, I did want to mention as well. I think I said as gel. Do you want to mention as well how much I appreciate Masons and other and non-Masons commenting on my videos on YouTube? Leaving comments absolutely, absolutely helps 100% with the with YouTube algorithm and with encouraging YouTube to share and promote this stream, right? YouTube ultimately bases, when I'm streaming, if I pop up in people's channel on people's feeds, it's ultimately because YouTube believes that people will engage with the channel and spend a long time watching. One way you get that is through watch time hours and engagement. Watching for 2 hours will encourage YouTube to promote the channel and promote the stream more than watching for 30 seconds. Leaving a like helps. Leaving, chatting in the chat helps. But leaving a comment also helps big time. I got my hair cut yesterday. I got a shave as well. Um, No, user, neither of that is true. You absolutely can be a low skilled worker and you can join without a degree. Freemasonry does not discriminate against, again, one's education or one's employment level. Although, by the way, I'd also say I'm not a big fan of the term low skilled. Um, I find that's very often used in a derisive tone. I mean, it takes a lot of skill to work at a McDonald's. It takes a lot of skill to be a valet. It takes a lot of skill be a plumber, be a custodian. Like I don't know what low skilled means, but in my experience, there's no such thing as low skilled labor, right? All labor is skilled labor, at least to a certain extent. If I were to join the Masons, what have expected out of me? Well, I definitely agree with that, Lobola. Um, I mean, labor is a skill in and of itself. If you're involved in labor, that is in and of itself a skill, right? Um, so board 2323. Now, this is an interesting debate. Honestly, for me personally, I believe that Freemasonry does actually should at least expect things from you beyond paying your dues. You should be expected to show up for a meeting regularly. You should be expected to know your work, especially if you're an officer. You should be expected to be charitable. You also should have expectations set on you in terms of how you act within the world as a whole, right? You should absolutely be expected, in my opinion, to, be maybe a better citizen than what you would be otherwise. Not, making sure you're not, for example, breaking the law, etc., etc. However, as a general rule, that's not what we see. What we see within Freemasonry is you're expected to pay your dues, but then the amount of time and effort and dedication you put into the craft really is up to you. I know some Masons who joined, they pay their dues every year, but maybe you see them once a year, maybe you see them once every 5 years at a meeting, but they maintain their membership because they pay their dues, which is the one for sure requirement. The other requirement, though, I will say, is you're expected to be a good citizen if, while you're a Mason, you were to commit a criminal offense, you would most likely be suspended from the lodge for committing a crime, because doing so, again, brings all of Freemasonry into disrepute. Um, Hello, Methods of Dance. Please hit like and subscribe. No, there's not a political divide. There's a divide, but it's not political. It's a divide based on ritual and ceremony. There's different rituals and different ceremonies between the two groups. It's also not a personal, like, emotional divide. Like Scottish Rite Masons and York Rite Masons have no issue with one another. They're just engaged in different forms of Freemasonry. Um, I did. Well, I mean, I got my hair cut and shaved. I'm lazy, so what I do is usually when I get my hair cut, I'll get a shave as well, just because I'm too lazy to you know, shave myself every day. I'm a very lazy person. Hello, Methods of Dance. Please hit like and subscribe. Jodo, I'm trying to do this for work, so please consider doing a super chat. Just 99 cents would help out majorly, and it would be very, very much appreciated. I would definitely say that's not the case. I'm lazy, but I'm lazy because I'm lazy. Being a Freemason has nothing to do with it. Most Masons, in my experience, at least active Masons, are very hardworking. So, no, you're incorrect. I do not know who Mr. Bond is, but no, Freemasons can't get anyone out of jail. That's not our job. We do not have power like that, despite what people think. I'm working on it. I saved a lot of money because I worked in a few different, I worked for many years, and I don't have a lot of expenses, so I saved a lot of money. I've also had a lot of brothers support me and send me some money to help me with this through Patreon, through private donations. My dad sent me some money, which I very much appreciated. And I don't have to spend any money on shoes. So things are working out pretty well. But it can always work out better. So help a brother out. We do. We have many black masons. We have black masons and white masons and, you know, any shade in between. Um, Richard, I would say no. I mean, again, this kind of goes to what I said before about Freemason or Masonic lodges tend to reflect um, the demographics of the communities in which they're located. So if a Masonic lodge is located in a community in which the majority of community members work in government, then the lodge itself will have a lot of government workers in it. If they are in a community where the majority of members, majority of workers are blue collar, that's what you'll get. Like I visited a lodge in Elko, Nevada, which is incredible. I have such fond memories of that. But I went to a lodge in Elko, Nevada, and it was a mining town. So basically, every Mason in that town, or every Mason who met in Elko, Nevada, worked for the mines, which actually was a big issue because one of the things I guess the company would do regularly is if you worked for them in the mines, they would send you all around the country, in fact, all around the world, to work in different mines for them, depending on where they needed people. The problem is that meant that it was very hard for Masons to dedicate themselves to Freemasonry because they would very likely end up, in a different state or a different country for that matter. Um, so it's one of those things where again, in the same way, Freemasonry or Masonic Lodge will reflect the religious makeup of the community in which it's located, also reflects the occupations. Um, yeah, there are many Christian Freemasons, Catholic, Protestant, non-denominational. I mean, it may be more on the left methods of dance. I would say I've never really thought about it. I've never really I'm 18th degree Scottish Rite. I've never really seen anything that would indicate that Scottish Rite is particularly more left or right. I don't know. I mean, what I have to do is ask my brothers, but they, we don't really discuss it in lodge, obviously. So that can be the case. Yes, Brother Michael Moore, that is the case, actually. You are not going to see the spaceship today, Kai Jewel. If I can get a $5 million super chat, you will still not see the spaceship because we have no spaceship, but I'd very much appreciate it. Um, where am I from? I am from Windsor. Well, I was born and raised in Winnipeg, greatest country in the world. It's greatest country in the world. I was born in Winnipeg, Manitoba, in the greatest country in the world, Canada. However, I currently live in Windsor, Ontario, also in the greatest country in the world, Canada. Well, methods of dance, there you go. Like I said, if you give me $1 million super chat, you will still not see the spaceship because we have no spaceship. But I would appreciate it nonetheless. Or you can do a 99 cent super chat. And 99 cents helps out big time. It absolutely is. I love Canada. Now, I'm a firm believer that every Mason should feel that way about his country, even if he or she does not like the political um, situation at the time. They should still love the country itself. I've said it a million times. You cannot separate the condition of a Masonic lodge from the condition of the country in which it's located. You also cannot separate a love of Masonry from a love of country. It's about civic pride. Now, Freemasonry reminds you to look beyond that love to a global brotherly love. For example, Brother Michael Moore and I are not of the same country, but he's my brother, and I love him as much as I would love a countryman of mine. But I do love my country, and I think we in Freemasonry should care about that. That's why I'm always posting on my channel what's happening in Windsor, Essex, because I want to be a cheerleader. Because as Windsor and Essex does better, so too will Freemasonry within Windsor and Essex. That's why, for example, on March 28th, I'm organizing a community services fair celebrating and promoting different community services within Windsor and Essex County. In fact, the entire county, not just Windsor. This is Masonic Live because I talk about Freemasonry. Um, I'm Canadian because, that's what I talk about. Now, tonight at 11 p.m., I'm going to be on my other channel, youtube.com/Cameron Adamson. And I'm going to talk about, we're going to watch My Bloody Valentine, one of my favorite scary movies. I didn't know that, Michael Moore. Are you a member of Lodge Holy Land as well? I had no idea. Well, that's weird, Rooster Cogburn. First of all, why would you give a shit whether somebody's Jewish or not? You know, people can be whatever religion they are. All right, I did not know that you were a member of the same lodge I am. That's really cool. Um, well, Kilmon Kilts. My suspicion is, or clicks. I can't tell if it's Kilmon clicks or Kilmon. No, it's clicks. I don't get what your name is supposed to be. Clickmon clicks. All right, there we go. So there is a Prince Hall branch of Freemasonry. I have a very kind of mixed, I'm trying to think of the way to describe it. I love the fact that we have Prince Hall Freemasonry because Prince Hall has provided so much to the Masonic family and is such a valuable part of the Masonic family. At the same time, I'm always going to be disappointed in the fact that there was a need for Prince Hall Freemasonry based on the racism of, unfortunately, Freemasons at the time in Boston. It's one of those things where out of something bad, something great developed. Something great, not just in America, but something great around the world. Um, Method of dance, Freemasons should not be banning anyone for converting to any religion. Catholicism may say you can't be a Freemason, but Freemasonry welcomes Catholics, including Roman Catholics. It has changed since then, I guess, and that's a really good thing. Um, and don't get me wrong, even though within Freemasonry, it is based on tolerance and respect for others, that doesn't mean we always reach those goals. It's unfortunate, but that does sometimes happen. Although also, I would never use the term excommunicated to refer to somebody being suspended from Freemasonry. Excommunication brings in mind religious kind of connotations. Um, Hello, Lee Partridge. So I did want to talk today. Sorry, Rusty, I am going to talk about Freemasonry, about Thomas Dunkerley. Now, today is Friday the 13th. I choose to believe that we celebrate Friday the 13th in honor of Jason Voorhees, the patron saint of Friday the 13th. Um, However, there are perhaps other reasons why we note it. One of the most common explanations is on Friday the 13th. That was the date in 1807. That was the date when the King of France, apparently with the motivation of the Pope at the time, ordered the disbandment and arrest of all Knights Templars. The Knights Templars were a monastic military order founded in the 11th century, the purpose of which was to provide safe passage for pilgrims traveling from Europe to Jerusalem during the First Crusades. As they, developed, they grew in greater and greater levels of power and influence. They built castles and forts all along the routes leading from Europe to Jerusalem. They were in fact also very often considered the world's first international bankers, in that in order to facilitate travel and in order to facilitate the patronage or the protection of pilgrims, the escort of pilgrims, they needed to be able to move money around. And so they kind of developed a banking system based on that. The Knights Templar, again, it existed from approximately, if I'm getting the date correct, 1118 to 1307 AD, when, primarily due to the power and influence they had developed, the King of France on Friday the 13th in 1807 ordered the Knights Templar to be arrested and in many cases tortured and put to death. The last Grand Master of the Knights Templar was Jacques de Molay. And if you know anything about Masonic youth groups, you'll know why the name de Molay is important. Anyways, about 400 and some years after the end of the Knights Templar, Freemasonry had developed, speculative masonry had developed, this being what I'm a part of, these civic or community groups. And in the 17th century, what you started to see was many, he definitely was not, you started to see many Masons begin to claim a direct lineage or a direct connection between the Crusades, the Knights Templars, and Freemasons, starting with Chevalier Andrew Raymond in, I can't think of when it was now, in 1737. He famously gave a speech to a series of new initiated Masons claiming that Freemasonry and stonemasonry actually evolved from, or that Freemasonry, excuse me, actually evolved from Crusaders, which was meant to, he used the term Crusaders, but most believe what he actually meant were the Knights Templars, not the Crusaders as a whole. So that was the first time a Mason had claimed a connection between the Knights Templars and Freemasons. In my opinion, it's apocryphal, not literal. I think you had the Knights Templars, then you had 400 years, then you had Freemasons. And then Freemasons, when developing ritual and ceremony and deriving moral lessons, looked back at the Knights Templar as a guidepost to gather some of those lessons and symbols. Um, well, the small hats are from the shrine. So then, another person, though, who was very important within the development of the Knights Templars and the Royal Arch in general within Freemasonry was Thomas Dunkerley. Born October 23rd, 1724, passed away November 19th, 1795. He was an active promoter of Royal Arch Masonry. Thomas Dunkerley was the first Grand Master of the Masonic Order of Knights Templars, formed in London in 1791. His publication of the various charges and lectures has assured his place in Masonic history. He was the past Senior Grand Warden of England, Provincial Grand Master for the countries of Dorset, Essex, Gloucester, Hereford, Somerset, and Southampton, with the city and county of Bristol and the Isle of Wight. And he was a past Grand Master and Grand Superintendent of Royal Arch Masons over 18 counties. He was the natural son of King George II, and he spent most of his career as a gunner in the English Navy, until he was given a pension in 1767 by the grandson of his father, George III. He was called to the bar in 1774, although made little progress in the profession. What I find so fascinating, I've said it a million times, is really, I did not know that, Brother Michael Moore. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I forget the pretend reason, or sorry, I forget the pretend reason that the King of France gave, but the real reason was obviously jealousy over the power that the Knights Templars were developing within Europe. Um, I've said a million times that Freemasonry is a story of stone and water. Stone is obvious. We are stone masons, or at least we are evolved from stone masons. Water, Freemasonry developed in England. As a consequence, for it to spread anywhere, it had to spread through naval ships, either military or economic ships, right? Business ships. That's how Freemasonry made it out of the island and made it through the rest of the world, was on boats and on ships. That's why so many of the first Masonic lodges formed around the world were formed in ports and port towns. That's why you still see Freemasonry in Hong Kong and Macau, even if not in mainland China. That's why the first Mason in Canada was in Nova Scotia, and the first Mason in America was in Boston. And with Thomas Dunkerley, you see that he had a very illustrious naval career. He was a gunner in the English Navy until given a pension in 1767. Hello, the eyes of the Lord. Please hit like and subscribe. He was initiated January 10th, 1754, into Lodge number 31 in Three Turns, Portsmouth. Somerset House Lodge number 224, he was the founding master of. He was the past senior Grand Warden in November 1786 under the Premier Grand Lodge of England. And once again, he was the first Grand Master of the Masonic Order of Knights Templars, formed in London in 1791. I mean, 3C3C33. I don't know if that's supposed to mean anything, the name. I've known many Catholic Freemasons. It is completely up to you. You know, you should never do anything that makes you feel as though you are being, I don't know what the word is, kind of against your faith. So certainly, if you felt that being a Freemason was keeping you from being active within your faith or dedicating yourself to that, and that's where your focus is, then demitting is absolutely the right thing to do. You should focus on again being a Catholic or be Catholicism. I would say again, though, in my experience, I've known many Catholic Freemasons who seem to have no issue being both a Catholic and a Freemason. But if demitting made you feel closer to your Catholic faith, then that's absolutely the right thing to do. Freemasonry should never come between one's faith and the person himself. Um, I look good every day, no filter. I mean, and that's no problem, 3C. That is absolutely your right to leave Freemasonry. To demit is the term. I still hope you'll consider liking and subscribing to this channel, though. Um, I care about his faith, no filter boss, because he cares about his faith. And if he cares about it, then I care about it. Don't be talking to other people on the chat. Are you religious, Cameron? I am not religious per se. Like, I don't identify with any particular religion. I would say I'm culturally Christian, meaning I'm more familiar with Christianity than any other faith, but I not necessarily believe in Christianity. I would say I'm not religious, but I do believe in a supreme being. I define the supreme being as the rational nature of the universe, as expressed through science and geometry. All right, no filter, boss. You're gonna get in a timeout. Um, you don't talk about other people on the stream as a general rule. You can call me a fool. That's perfectly fine. Most people would agree I'm a fool, but don't call other people on the stream a fool. Sorry, what's the vocational calling that you're pursuing, 3C? Do you mean within the church or um well, thank you, 3C. Okay, more power to you. I wish you the best of luck. I'm sure it's a very challenging job, a very challenging vocation. It's not something I can speak to. Again, I know very little about the intricacies, but I'm sure there's a lot of there's a challenging quality to it, and I wish you the best of luck. Um, LOL, please hit that like and subscribe button. So going back to Thomas Dunkerley, um, right, again, the first Grand Master of the Templars. I have no idea, Rick Charles. I have no idea what happens to us when we die. Masonically speaking, the best way you could say it is, I'm speaking from emulation ritual perspective. There does exist within us an immortal idea. What that idea looks like upon our passing, I do not know. Vi Victa, you are a strange person. Thomas Dunkerley was a prominent Freemason, appointed provincial Grand Master of several provinces, promoted Royal Arch Masonry, and introduced Mark Masonry to England, and he instituted the National Body for Templar Masonry, made possible by an annuity of £100, rising to £800, which he obtained from King George III, by claiming to be his father's illegitimate half-brother. Again, this is why I've always been under the impression that King George III was a Freemason, though apparently most people are now saying he wasn't. The fact that he was so supportive of Royal Arch, as well as having his portrait in UGLE, as well as the Square magazine says he is, always made me believe he was. That is definitely not the case, Vi Victe. I'd be willing to bet my arm, and since I'm missing two legs, that's a big bet. that that is not the case at all. Right? So Dunkerley was initiated to Freemasonry at Lodge number 31 at the Three Turns in Portsmouth in 1754. In 1760, he obtained a warrant for a lodge aboard the HMS Vanguard, which he took to form London Lodge in 1768. After leaving Vanguard, he obtained a warrant for a lodge on HMS Prince, which he later transferred to HMS Guadalupe. This later became the Somerset House Lodge, meeting at the Turk's Head in Soho. With the Vanguard warrant, he obtained a roving commission from the Premier Grand Lodge of England to inspect the state of the craft wherever he went, including to regulate Masonic affairs in the newly acquired Canadian provinces. There we go. Under this authority, as acting Grand Master of all warranted lodges in Quebec, he installed the first provincial Grand Master of Canada, Colonel Simon Fraser, in Quebec in 1760. In 1767, he was appointed provincial Grand Master of Hampshire. At that time, the office of provincial Grand Master had fallen into disuse, but Dunkerley would personally revive it in several counties. He is known to have been the provincial Grand Master for Essex in 1776, Dorchester and Wiltshire in 1777, and Gloucestershire and Hampshire in 1784. A document of 1786 appoints him provincial Grand Master for the countries of Dorset, Essex, Gloucester, Somerset, and Southampton, the city and county of Bristol, and the Isle of Wight. In 1785, Dunkerley founded the Lodge of Harmony number 225 at the Toy Inn at Hampton Court. In 1790, he was also made provincial Grand Master of Headinshire. In 1766, the Moderns, who worked with Royal Arch degree, formed a grand chapter with Lord Blaney at its head. He made Dunkerley his grand superintendent, in which capacity he authorized chapters and toured his provinces, creating new chapters and Royal Arch Masons, frequently exceeding his authority. Although Dunkerley belonged to the Moderns Grand Lodge, he leaned towards the ancients in ritual, making him a natural ambassador for Royal Arch Masonry in his own Grand Lodge. He was one of the signatories on the original charter of the Moderns Grand Chapter. The first evidence of Mark Masonry is 1769, when Dunkerley at Royal Arch Chapter made several brethren Mark Masons and Mark Masters. It's possible he created the degree. In 1790 and 1791, Dunkerley projected the centralization of the rather scattered Templar groups in England. On 24 of July 1791, he informed the York Encampment of Redemption that he had been invited to assume the office of Grand Master by the Knights Templar of Bristol. York favored the proposal, and in due course Dunkerley accepted the office. The groups referred to his authority in 1791 included the Observance of London, the Redemption of York, the Eminent of Bristol, and the Antiquity of Bath. Dunkerley became the Grand Master of the First National Grand Conclave of the Royal Exalted Religious and Military Order, Herodom Kadosh, Grand Elected Knights Templar of St. John of Jerusalem, Palestine, Rhodes, and Malta in 1791. His energy and organizational zeal contributed to the growth of the order until his death in 1795. After this, the institution became moribund until revived by the Duke of Kent. He published a number of charges, lectures, and songs related to different branches of Freemasonry. Together with Grand Secretary Hallestein and William Preston, famous for Preston Webb Freemasonry, he campaigned and raised funds for the first dedicated headquarters of English Freemasonry, the First Freemasons' Hall. During his lifetime, he held various high Masonic offices, past Senior Grand Warden of England, Provincial Grand Master for the counties above mentioned, and past Grand Master and Grand Superintendent of Royal Arch Masons over 18 counties. His major contribution was the emerging higher degrees, the Templar, Royal Arch, Arch Mariner, and Mark degrees. Not only did he successfully promote them, he organized them, standardized their ritual, and forced them to keep their proper records. The chat is weird because we got weird people on the chat. We got foolish, stupid people on the chat. Rooster, I'm pretty sure that Germany became a pretty terrible place after outlawing Freemasonry, um, which is why, the Marshall Plan was necessary to save them. Um, Vi Victor, you make your blood boil because you make your blood boil because you are a foolish person. Um, And Lobola, Freemasons are neither mostly homosexuals nor racist. In fact, Freemasonry is tolerant of all different religions, as well as all different peoples of different ethnicities, different backgrounds, different occupations. It could be black, white, wherever you're from, whatever your skin color, Freemasonry is tolerant. Freemasonry actually practices universal tolerance. That is, in my opinion, one of the greatest strengths of it, and one of the things I think I'm most proud of. Um, yeah, we're getting the trolls at 1 a.m. So be it. I have no idea what that means, but that seems, I don't even know what that quote is meant to mean, other than nobody should complain. Complaining is stupid. Do your best to make the world a better place. Do your best to make your, life better for those around you and those who are not around you. Do your best to make life better for everybody. And if you succeed, you succeed. If you fail, at least you tried. Um, Thank you, Ice Gardens. Everybody like and subscribe. It would be truly appreciated. We got the hearts. Is that Smokey the Clown? I think we got Smokey the Clown in the chat. Don't forget, Smokey, you and me, February 28th. I look forward to our stream together. Just send me a message and let me know what time works best for you. Um, I have no agenda other than I like to talk about Freemasonry, and I want to turn my passion for Freemasonry into a profession. Well, thank you. I did get a fresh haircut. I'm looking great. And thank you for being here, Gooey. So that was you doing the hearts, so not Smokey. All right, cool. You are definitely trolling. No, everybody pays your dues, period. Um, it's not Jewish, Rooster Cogburn. You are incorrect. You are wrong. Freemasonry is not Jewish. Freemasonry is not associated or part of any religious or ethnic group. I would say nobody should be complaining is the point. And if the idea that somebody is complaining and therefore you're having success, that's a foolish way to look at things um, across the board. So Freemasonry was illegal in Germany, tin. It was illegal in Germany during World War II. Many Freemasons actually were sent to concentration camps. Obviously, with the ending of the war and with the Marshall Plan and with I guess the Reconstruction, if that's the right term of Germany, Freemasonry returned. Freemasonry is presently very popular in Germany, to my knowledge, anyways, and I think that's wonderful. But yes, during World War II, Freemasonry was made illegal in Germany under the Third Reich. I forget when precisely. I think it was I think it was 1933, but I could be wrong about that date. Um, I mean, 33 to 45. Okay. All right, Vi Victor, you need to calm down. Maybe I'm Jewish, maybe I'm not. What difference does it make? And also, what difference would it make if I'm homosexual or not? Why is that relevant? So it was 1933. I was right. There you go. There's actually some really, I would say, um, what's the word? Motivational, inspirational stories of Freemasons during that time period. In one case, it was actually, that you had Masons from Belgium formed a Masonic lodge in a concentration camp. So talk about dedication. Like we have Masons in 2025 who are too lazy to go to their lodges just down the street. And meanwhile, you have these Masons creating lodges in concentration camps to their credit. Um, Quality Sauce, welcome. You are on people are talking about Jews because unfortunately we have some trolls in the chat, and we also have some conspiracy theorists in the chat who believe that Freemasonry is Jewish and also believe calling somebody Jewish is an insult. Neither of which is true. First of all, Freemasonry is not Jewish. Second, um, uh, it's not an insult or otherwise to call somebody Jewish unless it's coming from Vi Victi, which is, one of the things he's going to deal with. But there you go. I did, and I think it's important for me as a Freemason to try to push back against these ideas because they're harmful to people, including some people who are my friends. Tintin, do I really believe all of what? Um, yeah, he's very annoying. I'm gonna put some people in timeout. Although what I am also gonna do is say, um, I don't know what the noticing means, but that's a really strange thing to say. But unfortunately, it's one of those things where you just have to deal with the trolls as they come. It seems highly doubtful, Rooster Cogburn, that he is now he may be in his heart a good dude, but it's clear that his heart and his mind have been twisted by foolish information and foolish ideas. How many, how bored are you? How many different things do you create, for heaven's sakes? I will say, if nothing else, Phi Victe is dedicated to creating YouTube accounts. Um, so, I mean, you would think he had better things to do with his time. Um, I did, Mr. Grumble. I did. Despite the fact that it was very annoying, I'm pretty sure Vi Victi set the fire alarm up to make me try to ruin my stream. I did. I guess it was a false alarm. I mean, I've never seen anything to indicate otherwise, that there was an actual fire. But believe me, it was annoying. I would say Vile is a he's not a monster, but he has monstrous ideas. Um, and monstrous ideas is pretty not good. Um, but again, it could happen anywhere. I mean, I'm trying to watch Nuremberg, the movie, and the whole point of that movie is, the Nazis were not these uniquely evil people or uniquely cruel people. They were people who, through a variety of different reasons, were twisted into terrible human beings. And that's possible for anybody. It would be nicer to think that, there's some certain class of people that's just different and evil, but that's not the case. They're humans. And if we don't protect ourselves and protect our mind and protect our peace of mind, it's very easy and very dangerous for us to become the same as them. We need to be careful. We need to do our best to um, guard against the thoughts and ideas that will give us permission to harm others. Um, Hello, Lord Ronnie. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Um, yeah, he is goofy, that's for sure. Vi Victi, I'm going to give you credit. You are dedicated. At this point, I'm nearly positive that you set the fire alarm off in my building last night. Um, why are you trying to win? I don't get what that means. What does it mean to win in this context? Because it seems to me that your winning would be pretty terrible for the entire world. Well, there's probably a good reason for that. Don't make me do it again. Although we are going to be ending this stream shortly. Don't be threatening Vi, Gooey, or you're going to end out in a timeout as well, Gooey. So don't be threatening anybody. I think I have to put Lobola in a bit of a timeout as well. Yeah, this chat does need to chill for real. By the way, before you go, Michael Moore, what do you think about, the information I gave about Thomas Dunkerley? Did it make sense to you? Did it sound good? Well, thank you for the apology, quality. I appreciate that. Because sometimes you got to time out people. So he has at least 15 um, channels, apparently. Awesome. And was it anything you didn't know already? Anything that you didn't know that you learned? Well, I got to time people out at some point, Quality Sauce. It's my stream, it's my call. They can come back tomorrow. I don't ban people as a general rule. Now, I've never banned anybody yet, but there may be a point. But as a general rule, I try not to ban anybody. But yeah, Michael Moore, was there anything I said that you didn't know or you learned something new? Because that is always one of my goals with this channel is to try to help people. Again, even Masons such as yourself who are very dedicated and know a ton if there's something they didn't know. Um, I own this stream, it's my stream. And YouTube tells me I do because they give me the ability to remove people. If you want to do it differently, then start your own stream and, don't time anybody out. Well, it's one of those things where, right, I don't necessarily just want views exclusively. Obviously, I appreciate views because the more views I get, the more I can talk about the thing I love. But I want to be incredibly careful that I'm also getting quality views. If people are being on the chat being foolish, that tends to turn people off. See, as Michael Moore said, right, the trolls become distracting. And as a consequence of the trolls being distracting, information I'm trying to get out doesn't end, I don't get as much out as I'd like. And that's a really big challenge. Although my advice for that in general will always be that, and this is true for any stream, um, if it is an interactive stream, like in the first hour, then pay more attention to the chat because it's one of those situations where paying more attention to the chat, you know what I'm saying and responding to. If I'm just providing generalized information about a historical person or historical fact, in that case, it's one of those situations where you don't really need to pay attention to the chat, right? You can just focus on what I'm saying, and you don't even have to look at the screen, or you can hide the chat, right? Because in those cases, it's much more important, I think, to focus on the information being provided. And that's not just true for my stream, that's true for every stream, right? That's what I do, anyways. If I'm listening to a YouTube channel and it's trying to provide me with specific information, I will either hide the chat or tune out the chat and just listen to what's being said. Not, which is a good way to do it, I think. So even a good way to do it is the first hour, it's the chat. The second hour, it's the specific topic. Honestly, I would say, if you ask me the greatest martial arts of all time, I would say without question it's Bruce Lee, at least from a movie perspective. Hello, Muslim 786. Please hit like and subscribe. I appreciate you being here very much. Um, but I got to go with Bruce Lee. Now, at least that's objectively. Subjectively, in my heart, I have to really give a big shout out to Jackie Chan because I did grow up with like Rush Hour, which I loved, by the way. I think Rush Hour is a great movie. Um, Rush Hour, a lot of his stuff, right? Shanghai Nights. That was a great film as well. So I like them both. Not Quite Normal. Please hit like and subscribe. Gordon Lau. I mean, I enjoyed Kill Bill, but I haven't seen it for so long. I got to watch it again. I'm not a huge. It was a false alarm. We're all doing fine. It's one of those things where I've never been a big Quentin Tarantino fan. Never really. I mean, I didn't mind his films, but I'm not. They're not the films I'm putting on to watch if I'm bored. Put it that way. Um, we are doing just fine. All right, guys, we're gonna end this stream because I got a bunch of work to do. All right, guys, I'll talk to you later. I'm gonna put up a few posts about Thomas Dunkerley. You guys can. All right, Big C. Stop calling me cute. It's weird. We're going to be ending this stream. I hope everybody, though, has an excellent, excellent rest of the day, a great weekend. Going to be posting a bunch of stuff on socials, so you'll find all my stuff there. All right, talk to you later. If I could end this stream, that is. All right, there we go. Have a great weekend. Happy Friday the 13th. Find me on my personal channel, youtube.com/Cameron Adamson. We're going to be watching a scary movie. It's going to be a lot of fun.